Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here and welcome to my Doctor Who Season 18 ranking. So I'll be ranking all 7 stories from Doctor Who Season 18, the final season to feature Tom Baker as the 4th Doctor, as the incumbent incarnation. So these are his last 7 stories. And in all honesty, this was a very easy ranking to construct, apart from 2 stories in the middle, going on good. So yeah, and Season 18 to me, I think is an improvement on 17. I think there's better stories in this one to 17. 17, my biggest problem was there was more mediocre to bad stories in that season than possibly any other season in the classic era, and in fact the show overall, possibly. I mean, my opinion might change on that as we go along further down. I mean, we've now done 18 seasons. We've got we've got 8 more classics and 11 new series to go. So we've got those, and we've still got those to do. So that opinion might change, but at the moment, I think it might be 17 as my least favourite, for the reasons I just stated. 18, I think there's a few more good stories in this one than weak, or at least good. Good on or more, good or better, as opposed to mediocre or worse. Unfortunately, like Season 13, which was an outstanding season, there is at least one massive stinker in this season, as bad as Space Pirates, or well, almost. This one more so than Planet of Evil. Planet of Evil. I wasn't really a fan of that story, but my goodness, this season has an even bigger stinker, almost as bad as Space Pirates. In fact, it's so almost as bad. It's actually even better than worse than Hellbent. Wow, I was surprised as well. So let's waste no more time and get straight into the Season 18 ranking. First of all, the stories are as follows: The Leisure Hive, Meglos, Full Circle, State of Decay, Warrior's Gate, The Keeper of Traken, and Logopolis. And this is also the longest season in number of episodes since Season 6. The episode number between Seasons 1 and 6 were between 39 and 40 at the lowest, and 45 at the most, and it was originally planned to air all year, or almost all year. However, they then cut it down to be between 20 and 28 episodes a season between Season 7 and 21, before cutting down to 13 to 14 between 22 and 26, and then 10 to 13 for the new series. So January 13 up to Series 7, then 12 for the Capaldi years, and now 10. But this season is the only season to have 28 episodes. Although K9 and Company was made on the budget of the season 19, which is why that season has 26 episodes, which is why that season has a 2-part story and is therefore 26 episodes instead of 28, because K9 and Company, a 15-minute long pilot episode, was made because of that. So it was made on that budget, apparently. And then after that, they had a few more problems that prevented 20 and 21 from even reaching 26 episodes, let alone 28. So Season 18. Let's start the actual ranking as of now, starting with number 7. Number 7 is the said story that I find almost as bad as the Space Pirates. It is Warrior's Gate. Not a surprise to anybody who's watched the reviews. Warrior's Gate is just a fucking mess. Well, it's not even a mess, it's nothing. There's nothing there. And nobody gives a damn apart from Tom Baker, Lala Ward, and to a smaller extent, Matthew Waterhouse and John Leeson. I think Matthew Waterhouse is going to gets better in the last 2 stories of the season as opposed to his 3 E-Space Trilogy stories. But oh god, Warrior's Gate, there's hardly any plot, and what's there, when it tries to make a plot, it tries, I'll give it that, it tries, but it ignores it. I actually did a review of the film Die Hard 2 recently, and there was a scene in that where I'm trying to pay attention to some sort of important plot development, but the attention is more on this guy, who's going to be the main baddie. He's doing aerobics, basically. He's training himself or something. And I'm just trying to listen to the television because he's having in his hotel room, I think he is, or apartment. Because that is important to what comes later in that film. The difference between Die Hard 2 and Warrior's Gate is that Die Hard 2 is a fucking awesome movie. Warrior's Gate is a fucking shit Doctor Who story. Okay, so no, when it, like I said, when it tries to do a story, it just falls flat, or it's ignored, or it's just pushed aside when we're trying to actually listen. Like the Doctor and some of the humans are listening to the robot, it's talking about it, and then the other one just cuts its head off. I'm trying to have some world building here. On top of that, boring, uninteresting, bad side characters. I mean, Berak is okay, but he's not that great. I mean, he sort of sees what his people had been like before they were slaves, and that they were bad, and sort of feels remorse and forgiveness, and sort of feels bad about it. And I suppose that is okay to then go off and try and save his race from slavery, but don't know. I'm still thinking they're not quite worth it. I mean, no one should be slaves, but are they worth it? But I suppose because Berak's remorseful, then all right, let's do it. And the way Romana leaves the story is so tacked on and so bad. It's possibly the worst companion exit of the show at this point. Except Dodo's, because she just ran off and just ran off, basically. She just left. Yeah, but apart from Dodo's, this is the worst companion exit of the show so far. Mind blown. Even some of the other weak ones, like Vicky, carbon copy of Susan. Stephen just leaves to help some people, although he's slightly more given an explanation why he does that. In that story, Ben and Polly just decide to leave. I think those are the weakest one, and Liz just goes back to Cambridge. Those are the weakest ones, but there is some sort of reason for most of those, and they sort of work. At least they don't feel tacked on at the end of their stories or at the start of the next story. They feel okay. Dodo's just decides not to carry on anymore, so that's actually a bit stupid, and the way she just leaves isn't that great. So, but besides that, I think this is the worst, because it's so tacked on, and just comes out of nowhere. It just sucks. And the same goes for K9 exits in the story as well. He's just given to Romana. Yeah, the Doctor just gave K9 to Romana. Yeah. I guess at some point after this, or before Romana came on board, maybe even, he delivered K9 Mark III to Sarah Jane, possibly. They do say it's in 1978 he dropped off K9 Mark III to Sarah Jane. So yeah, Warrior's Gate. For more reasons why I hate that story, please check out the review. I do give it a bit of a rant, but in a story that I consider almost as bad as the Space Pirates, of course I'm going to give it a fucking rant. And a fucking rant is exactly what some other people give this next story. Not me, but other people. Number 6 is The Leisure Hive. Jack McCulloch's least favourite Tom Baker story, and I can see why, but personally I don't hate this one as much as him, or Alan Kalo, or Harry Thomas. But it's certainly a weaker story. It's easily the weakest season opener since The Dominators. Well, actually, no, Destiny of the Daleks was actually slightly weaker because of its treatment of the Daleks. Another rant. Okay, excluding Destiny of the Daleks, it's the weakest one since The Dominators. The Dominators is still worse at the moment, obviously. I think there will be worse coming up later, but going to be a few Doctors' time. The thing is, Leisure Hive is also the first story for John Nathan Turner as producer. And as I did a small mini ranking at the end of that review, it's the worst of a producer or showrunner stories. The best is Tomb of the Cybermen, by the way, if anyone's wondering. For producer Peter Bryant, who, of course, his last story is the worst final story for a producer or showrunner. Space Pirates again. God, that story can never go away, can it? God, fuck off, Space Pirates! But, yeah, Leisure Hive is a disappointing start to John Nathan Turner's as producer of the show, especially one who's going to be around for until season 26. Not by choice in the last couple of seasons, but fair enough. He still is producer in season 26, so that's what we've got to deal with. And it's just not that interesting of a story. It's David Fisher's fourth and final script, and it's easily his weakest. I mean, yeah, it was sort of messed around with Christopher H. Bidmead again, a bit like Destiny was by Douglas Adams. Although I think Fisher had more to say in this one than Nation did in Destiny, so yeah, this story is not this is not Androids of Tara standard David Fisher. And unlike City of Death, where his story would become something outstanding, this story just becomes something weak. Not that interesting. And the more interesting stuff are put to the side for this more dull and boring, less interesting story. I will say Tom Baker and Lana will do great performances. But it's just not that interesting of a story for them to put their talent to it. Number 5. Number 5 I actually liked more previously. In fact, I would say that the same for all the other stories except two stories, maybe 3. But most of this season I liked more on the previous things. But this story was pretty high, moderately high beforehand. Now it's gone down a little bit. Meglos. Yeah, Meglos is just not that great either. I mean, it's more interesting than Leisure Hive and damn well better than Warrior's fucking Gate. But yeah, it's just not that great. Tom Baker does a great dual performance as the Doctor and Meglos, and he's got some great moments throughout the story. The stuff with the two rival groups on Deos or whatever it is. One of them is the Daons, and the other one's the Sevens or something. Not the 17. They're 17 leaders group. They're not leaders group. There's some other people. It's just not that interesting listening to them bicker, basically. Not debate, bicker. Argue, even. It's just not interesting. And it's just not that great until the second half of the story. That maybe even until, second half picks up a bit better. And that kind of works really well, actually. Parts 3 and 4 are really great, but you've got to sit through dull and boring parts 1 and 2 before you get to that point. That is why Meglos is quite low for me, because but also sort of not awfully low like the previous 2 stories. It's it's very half and half. You've got awful first 2 episodes, really good second 2 episodes, especially part 4. Part 4 is a really good episode. In fact, there seems to be a thing with these stories in this season. Part 4 seems to be the good stuff. Is where the best stuff comes from. Okay, and speaking of a story where it's part 4 is the best episode of the season, possibly just as much, if not more so than Meglos. Number 4, Tom Baker's final story, Logopolis. Yeah, I'm putting this one pretty low for a regeneration story. I mean, to be fair, 10th Planet was also in the middle of its season ranking as well, and season 4 ranking. The difference is that every story from 10th Planet onwards in that ranking were 9 or 10 out of 10s. War Games was 3rd in my season 6 ranking, and Planet of the Spiders, I think, came 2nd. Might have been 3rd. I think 2nd, actually. Despite both those top 2 stories getting 8s, not 9s. War Games was a 9, I think. I gave that a 9. 10th Planet was a 9. Logopolis is a 7, and therefore it's halfway on this ranking. Other regeneration stories will follow in the future. I definitely know that the next regeneration story is probably most likely going to stay at number 1 on my season 21 ranking. Its follow-up the following one will probably be my least favourite of season 24, or second least favourite. And that's all I'm going to tease for now. You'll find out what I think of the 7th Doctor's regeneration stories onwards afterwards when we get to those points. But Logopolis, I think the first episode is a bit dull, doesn't really have much going for it. There's a few good scenes, but it's mostly not very interesting. There's not really much happening. The best thing is Anthony Ainley, plus some great performances from Tom Baker and Matthew Waterhouse, and it does introduce Tegan, although it does stall some of the development and character growth just for some more conversation scenes with her aunt. And yeah, it is sad when her aunt is killed, and when Tegan's reaction in part 3, yeah, but it just doesn't really quite work as well. And the build-up of the Master isn't quite as good as in Keeper, because we already know Anthony Ainley is the Master, as we saw at the very end of Keeper of Traken, as opposed to revealing Jeffrey Beavers as the Master, because they would they were building up Melker to be the villain, and then they were sort of teasing it, and then just before the end of part 3, they revealed it. So I think Keeper of Traken handled its reveal better than Logopolis, because of Logopolis we already know who it is, and who's playing him, whilst Keeper of Traken, it was building it up and hinting at it. It was really well done there. But Logopolis not quite as good. Episode 2 and episode 3 get a bit better, but there are some dull mathematical stuff about Logopolis. I mean, it is good to build this world, Logopolis, but that's as far as it goes. Part 4, on the other hand, is amazing, and it's handled really well. I mean, it does take it a little bit of time to get there, but that also gives enough time for Traken to be destroyed and give Nyssa an emotional reaction. And then once we get onto the Pharos project, we get some really great stuff. The only thing I'm not really worried about at the end of that story is the security guards. As characters, they're not really that necessary. I mean, yeah, the Pharos project would have security guards, but why is there so many? Why they need to be featured as characters, I'm not really sure. Also, two free security guards are right behind Nyssa, Tegan, and Adric as they're running towards the Doctor. But they're not there by the time the Watcher helps the Doctor regenerate. It's a bit like a character in Keeper of Traken. Didn't he see Cassiar stun Traken? Tremus. Maybe he was paid to not look, but didn't he see what happened? Yeah, it seems to be a thing. Some characters who should have seen stuff don't see stuff, and that's just awkward. Or they choose not to in some cases, or choose to change or in some other cases, like in the Ark, they choose to twist other characters' words or something. It's very annoying, and Monster Paladin does that as well. It's just very annoying. But okay, Logopolis. Good end to finish off the Fourth Doctor's era. Pretty emotional ending as well. And probably the most serious story of the season, due to the feeling of dread and seriousness, especially once the Doctor speaks to the Watcher. But besides that, not an amazing story. It's easily the weakest of the regeneration stories at this point. Out of the first 4, I would even argue the first 5. Okay, moving on to number 3. Now, this story, I was wondering reasons why Logopolis should be number 3, but all the reasons I was trying to find out were actually saying, this other story did them a little bit better, and therefore that one deserves to be number 3. So, number 3 is actually Full Circle. Yeah, Full Circle. Might be a surprise to some of you, but actually I think that story, it has a few similar issues as Logopolis does, but I think it handles it better. For starters, I think the slower build-up to the story, minus the seriousness and dread, is actually handled a little bit better. There's more character development. There's more point to some scenes. Part 1 actually has quite a lot going on in it that has to handle, and I think it's actually edited better for the most part. Which was an issue I had with part 1 of Logopolis, where it was just going back and forth for some scenes, whilst Full Circle not so much. And even though there's a lot going on in part 1, it still has enough to handle in the other 3 episodes, which worked well. I think part 4 might be the best, I'm not sure. It's certainly a good one. I love how Lana Ward gives us an evil, a possessed Romana in the second half, and it's just brilliantly. The Marshmen are a bit weak design, but the cliffhanger is pretty cool at the end of part 1, and the development of their character, what they're like, is actually nice to look at. And the twist is it's alright. It's okay twist. Number 2, this one was originally going to be my favourite story of the season before I rewatched it. Then stayed my favourite until I saw another story that took over it. This is State of Decay. Now, in my season 17 ranking, I believe it was, or Sharda review, I said that this one was, I predicted a 9 out of 10 scored story of the season. I thought it was going to be this story. But then I watched it and I actually changed my mind and lowered it to an 8. And therefore, the 9 out of 10 prediction went away until another story. I rewatched another story, so we'll get onto that in a minute. Or two, or however long it takes. But State of Decay, I think it has a very interesting story with the vampires. I think the characters are developed well. I think the threat is well done, and I think the actors do a good job. I'm not so worried about the stuff with the villagers or the rebels. I think these are probably some of the weaker rebels in the series, besides this one guy who dies actually helping people. Well, helping Romana at least. And the stuff with the great vampire is also really good. I like how all this backstory about it. A bit like how in Time Monster the Doctor talked to Joe about an old hermit. In this story, he does the same here to Romana, and this time he talks about a giant vampire. And yeah, it works really well. And I like hearing these stories about the old hermit. In fact, the old hermit could even have been Campo from Planet of Spiders. Possibly, I don't know if he says it is in that story. I can't remember. If it was, that's a great time with Time Monster there, and this story then ties into those two stories with this. So that's great. And the stuff at the end is also really cool, and also pretty scary for younger viewers with the vampires dying. That is pretty good. And there isn't so much Adric in this story. I think Adric should have had a bit more to do in this story, considering it's his first time as a companion properly. But, oh well, fair enough. At least K9 gets the best stuff to do this season. I mean, he has been pretty useless this season for the most part, maybe apart from a few things in Full Circle, but that's about it. He's been pretty useless this season. So he hasn't been as useful since Sharda. So, and if Sharda doesn't really count, then Haunts of Nymon. Good God. So yeah. So State of Decay, pretty great story, and yeah, but number 1 is a story that I actually found a lot more entertaining, mostly on rewatching it. I found it a lot better. Rewatching it, I found the build-up great, the tension great, the reveals great. It just worked so well. The Keeper of Traken. Yeah, I just thought this story just was had great setup. It built up the story and the tension and the reveal just brilliantly. Some great characters. Not everyone does a great job. I don't mean performance-wise, I mean characters. Not every character is great. Not everyone does great stuff. But, you know, fine. But it's still better than some of the other stories this season. And it's handled really brilliantly. And Geoffrey Beevers is outstanding as the Master. He's just so good. He's so bloody good. My only problem with it is that he doesn't get enough bloody screen time. Not even as Melka. I mean, he gets to say lots of lines throughout parts 2 and 3, but we don't really get as much screen time. But that's as a build-up. That's perfect. It's just that afterwards, he absorbs Tramus's body, so that's why I wanted more of Geoffrey Beevers. That, and because he is perfect in the role, and he gets to do a bit more facial expressions, as he's more of his mask or makeup is able to give him a more expressional face, as opposed to Peter Pratt's mask, as we saw in The Deadly Assassin. It was very clearly a mask, whilst here the mask or the makeup managed to line up with his facial expressions perfectly, like how Davros's masks do. Well, apart from with David Goodison, but with Michael Wisher, Terry Molloy, and Julian Beach, certainly. Maybe more so in Beevers' case, he's just perfect. Oh, I can see why Big Finish brought him back. Plus the fact that Anthony Aney declined to come back, and then he passed away before he could join in. So, yeah, but Geoffrey Beevers, oh, he's so fucking good. I think I have more respect for him as the on-screen master now than I did before. I already had some I already respected him, of course, and even more so for the audios. But now, I love his on-screen master. I'm so glad he's got some more Big Finish audio. Well, lots of Big Finish audios, so we can listen to him both as master between Delgado and Ainley, and as surprise. You may be surprised to know, but according to my friend Matt Moyer, Ainley's master starts to look and sound more like Beavis' master later on in his life, as his body's decaying, basically. So he's going back to how he looks like that beforehand, before he stole the body. So he's starting to look and sound like Beavis again, and that's continuity is probably a direct result of getting Beavis into the role of more made for Ainley, I think, in the Big Finish. But I think that's because they wrote originally the role for it to have Ainley in it, but when he declined, they got Beavis in, and therefore just made the excuse. Probably, I mean, it's just something my friend Matt told me one time. So yeah, just Beavis is just so fucking good. And yeah, and this is also a great penultimate story for the Fourth Doctor. In fact, I just realised this is the best penultimate story for a Doctor out of the first four Doctors. Out of the first four Doctors, this is an outstanding penultimate story, and easily the best of the first four. Well, look what we got for the other three. We've got Smugglers. It's good. Not amazing. It's weaker than Full Circle. Then we got Space Pirates again. Oh, that fucking thing's come back. And then we've got the Monster of Paladin. And now we've got the Keeper of Traken. So yeah, that's it from my season 18 ranking, and I'll go through the list one more time. Number 7, Warrior's Gate. Number 6, The Leisure Hive. Number 5, Meglos. Number 4, Logopolis. Number 3, Full Circle. Number 2, State of Decay. And number 1, which replaced State of Decay as the 9 out of 10 story of the season, The Keeper of Traken. Okay, that's it from me. Thank you for watching this season 18 ranking. I will be doing a Fourth Doctor top 10 story ranking, my own personal ranking, and then after that we'll be on to season 19 and K9 and Company. But besides after K9 and Company, we'll be on to season 19, excuse me, and starting off the Fifth Doctor's era. Woo! Okay, see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. So, let's get because after seasons 1 to 6 were 39 to 45 episodes, mostly, including a 2-part. And then I guess after that they just decided to make... Actually, I did a review of Die Hard 2 recently, a film called Die Hard 2. Certainly, Leisure Hive is a... But the thing is with Leisure Hive, it's also introducing us to... But the problem with Leisure... But who, of course, gets the worst exit story... Who, of course, also gets the worst last story... Meglos. Fucking burps. Movie, we'll see how that goes. And that's all I'm going to say from, and that's all the teasing. But as opposed to Jeffrey Beavers, where they were building up, as opposed to actually revealing Beavers as the master. Part 4 is great though. It has this story, I do think. I was wondering, does Logopolis... No. And... yeah, and I also like the... And that is a direct result. And that story arc is probably